Matt Ducey.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm rising in support of the Child Protection Child Sex Offender Register Bill in its second reading. Mr. Speaker, it probably come as a surprise to many people that this country doesn't already have a child sex offender register. It will be a register where offenders over the age of 18 offending children under the age of 16 will be registered. And for me, as an electorate MP, it's already happened in a small town where the fear starts, the allegations that there is a sex offender living in the town. And it does surprise people that when they talk to the authorities that there is no central register. And I think people look to us in those times and to the authorities that they are understanding where people are living, tracking offenders, and understanding how they can manage the risk a lot better. So over the course of this call today, Mr. Speaker, I want to touch on three areas. One is a bit more about the bill. Two is some of the issues that we had to address during the Select Committee stage, and three is some of the changes that we are now bringing back to the second reading. I just want to acknowledge the Chair, Alfred Naro, but all members of the Select Committee who I think did a very good job, stayed reasonably objective, it was constructive. It's quite an emotive issue, and at times we could have fallen down the hole of trying to debate punishment versus treatment and how this register will support that. In my own view, it probably fits somewhere in the middle of that continuum, but at the end of the day, this is only one tool that will support management of sex offenders better, Mr. Speaker. It was interesting, we were encountered how putting people on a register and the impact that has on human rights. We know that child sex offenders will be put on the register depending on their offence for 8, 15 years or life, but it was around their privacy of personal information. I mean, personally I thought tough. We had Zhan Young who introduced a members' bill that would stop child sex offenders being able to change their name. We had to take advice and we weren't around human rights issues able to implement that, but there was some changes made in this bill because of that bill. It did surprise me, fair to say. I thought it was a bit PC gone mad, but there it is. So we'll be talking a bit more about how some of those amendments were implemented into the current bill, Mr. Speaker. What we know in this register is that it will be very prescriptive. There will be three types of information sharing. There will be one, as you would expect, between police and corrections, sharing information about how we can make our children, our families safer, and how we can manage these offenders as well, Mr. Speaker. There's also an avenue for sharing information, and I think quite rightly, between government agencies, Housing New Zealand and MSD, but a third avenue for third parties, Mr. Speaker, where information will be able to be disclosed to people on the ground around offending history. But that comes at a restriction where they are not able just to go on and disclose that information to others as well. So basically it's very prescriptive on the register, three types of information. As been alluded to in the previous speaker, this is a field that is developing. Research is understanding how better we can mitigate or manage this risk. Treatment as well, which although a lot of people will be sceptical. But as we move further into this field and the research evolves, I mean, when you already look at some of the language that was spoken to us about the Child Sex Offender Register being a risk-based multi-agency management framework. I mean, it sounds like quite a bit of jargon really, but it's understanding, I suppose, the intricacies of using a tool like this, gathering the information we need about personal details, travel details, addresses and movements of sex offenders, and then how that informs supervision packages, treatment approaches and court orders that these sex offenders will be on, Mr. Speaker. When we looked at the cost-benefit analysis as well, it showed that the potential benefit of this bill was preventing up to 34 child sex offences. And I think we've also got to use, I suppose we call it the Pareto ratio, where 20-80, possibly only 20%, the Pareto ratio, only 20% of these will be recorded, 80% possibly not. So exponentially, there's a real capacity to understand how this can go forward. There's also a clear link of recidivism to other crimes for child sex offenders and how that will play out as well, Mr. Speaker. I just want to quickly touch on some of the changes. The first one was around when a child sex offender on the register would have to declare through travelling. Currently in the bill, they would have to declare children residing at the accommodation address. Of course, in a public house or an accommodation, if there is children there, the child sex offender wouldn't be able to name them. So the recommendation is change is that they would have to declare children that were residing with them. And there's also a change around when child sex offenders, the information they give to the register is not correct. That will be recorded as well, again building up a bigger picture of offenders to manage them as well. And just to finish off, Mr. Speaker, coming back around the change of name, it was agreed an amendment and change being put forward that with approval from a police commissioner, an offender will possibly be able to change their name. And I commend this bill to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Portal Williams.
Thank you.